Hey guys, it's Meg. Welcome to the Season 1 Mythic Plus Guide for Mistweaver. In this video, we will go over the identity of Mistweaver, as well as our best stats, our core abilities for healing, damage, and utility, as well as our cooldowns and defensives. We will talk about talent builds and any potential swaps, as well as our rotations. You will be able to find this guide in a written format with some additional information on my website at wayofthecrane.io. So to start out, I want to talk a little bit about what Mistweaver is. Mistweaver is a melee spec. We are targeted by melee mechanics. Most of our healing, most of our damage, and our utility are tied to melee abilities, and as a result, all playstyles involve a combination of casted healing spells and damaging abilities. Talent choice does not impact our classification. We are always considered melee and healer, so we may be included or excluded from certain mechanics for being melee or for being healers. Mistweaver has just about every form of healing. Most of our healing is from damage conversion, but we also heavily rely on hot uptime and bursty healing. We even have some shields in our kit. So Mistweaver is truly a hybrid healer, and our talents are greatly supportive of this identity by allowing us to provide maintenance healing through damage conversion and hots, and then burst healing through casted heals and cooldowns, with the damage conversion and hots acting as support during those high damage intake moments. Every aspect of Mistweaver's kit is designed to work together, and there's a lot of interactions between our talents. Some people don't want to use damaging abilities, so if you wish to play the extreme one way or another, you're obviously free to do so, but it's never something that I would recommend, and I wouldn't expect to find much success in trying to play so far in either direction since the spec design just doesn't support it. Because Mistweaver has so many interactions between talents, we are one of those always be casting specs, or ABC specs you might hear. Whether it's applying and reapplying hots, or healing through spells, healing through damage, or just DPSing during downtime, there's always something to be casting, and due to the interest in haste, we do end up being quite high APM. And lastly, Mistweaver remains one of these specs with large amounts of rotational buttons, even post-pruning. We have a lot of spells and abilities that we press for our regular rotation that provide healing and damage, and they're all equally important and have their place in our kit. For stats, Intellect is our main stat, and that is our highest priority stat above all others, but as far as secondaries go, Haste is going to be our highest secondary. Haste will be giving us a quicker GCD, faster casts, an increased hot tick rate, and a lower cooldown on abilities like Rising Sun Kick and Renewing Mist. And then Haste will also increase the speed at which you can drink your Mana Tea. Critical Strike is our second highest stat. This is an increase to damage and healing, but it will also contribute to the generation of your Mana Tea stacks. Versatility is our third highest, and it's a little less potent than Crit for the increased damage and healing, but it does aid in survivability and certain ability scaling like Cheat Cocoons and Life Cocoon. If you're worried about high damage intake or being one-shot in hierarchies, then you can prioritize Verse a little bit more. And finally, Mastery is our least valuable stat. Mastery provides an additional healing proc from Renewing Mist and Enveloping Mist applications, and with a talent, there is a chance to proc one with Rising Sun Kick, Black Cut Kick, and Spinning Crane Kick. Chi-Ji is also Mastery based, but due to current tuning and the impact of our other stats, high Mastery builds just aren't performing very well at the moment. For our main healing abilities, this is our Mastery, which is called Gust of Mist. There are two versions, one from the player, which is the green icon, and one from Chi-Ji, which is the red icon. Both versions are increased by having a higher mastery rating, so the more mastery you have, the higher these will be in your breakdown. But as we were just talking about, mastery is not a great stat for us, so it should be relatively low in your breakdown, at least for now. Shaylin's Gift is our main casted heal, and it functions as a large AoE heal as well as a spot heal. The way that it works is that over time in combat you gain clouds, or stacks, and these increase your healing done per stack up to a maximum of 10. You can spam Shaylin's Gift at 0 stacks, but your time spent in combat as well as some talent choice impacts the way that this functions. Renewing Mist is one of our hots that ends up doing quite a bit of our overall healing. These are applied and extended through the use of the spell itself and through various talents. Enveloping Mist is another hot that we have that also provides a small heal amp. It will also trigger our Apex talent, Spirit Font, which we will discuss in the cooldown section, and it will proc shields when used with the Conduit of the Celestial's hero talent, which we will discuss in the hero talent section. Soothing Mist has a few different things going on. It provides a little bit of healing by itself, but it primarily exists to provide instant cast onto your target during the channel. Enveloping Mist and Shaylin's Gift are instant cast while channeling Soothing Mist, and if you use either of these abilities on a different target while channeling, your Soothing Mist will follow to your target, allowing you to instantly swap targets without breaking your channel. Ancient Teachings is the baseline effect that allows damage conversion, and Jadefire Teachings is a talent that significantly increases the transfer rate in addition to giving us some health. This is usually pretty high in our breakdown, and it provides maintenance healing when used by itself, and will support other, more substantial healing like cooldowns. Way of the Crane is another form of damage conversion through spinning Crane Kick. Even though Ancient Teachings and Way of the Crane are both ways to heal through damage, they are not the same thing. Way of the Crane also allows Tiger Palm to stack twice per cast and Blackout Kick to cleave onto additional targets. These things will heal through Ancient Teachings. Moving on to core damaging abilities, Rising Sun Kick is one of our most impactful spells. This is our hardest hitting single target ability, which will heal through Ancient Teachings, but more importantly, it enables a ton of healing through talents like Rising Mist, Rapid Diffusion, Spirit Font, and Mistline. Ideally, Rising Sun Kick is used on cooldown, both for the healing it provides by the Ancient Teachings as well as maintaining HOTS. Tiger Palm is a basic single target builder that deals damage and generates a stack of Teachings of the Monastery. You spend Teachings of the Monastery by using Blackout Kick, and all this does is cause additional strikes of Blackout Kick, and has a chance to reset Rising Sun Kick's cooldown. Tiger Palm will also heal through Ancient Teachings. Blackout Kick is how we spend our Teachings of the Monastery stacks, and each Blackout Kick has a chance of resetting Rising Sun Kick. Blackout Kick will also heal through Ancient Teachings. Spinning Crane Kick is a spammable AoE ability that will also provide healing through Way of the Crane. Thunder Focus Tea is a very important and very complicated part of our kit. So when you use Thunder Focus Tea with Enveloping Mist, it is an instant cast and provides an instant heal alongside the application of the HOT. When used with Renewing Mist, the duration will be increased by 10 seconds, and when used with Rising Sun Kick, the cooldown is reduced by 9 seconds. If you are talented into Secret Infusion, each ability additionally provides a stat buff. Enveloping Mist gives crit, Renewing Mist gives haste, and Rising Sun Kick gives verse. This allows you to use either the empowered ability for its effect or the stat, but both are beneficial in any given situation. When you are talented into Emperor's Elixir, your Rising Sun Kick fires off a Jadefire Stomp frontal that deals damage and heals through Ancient Teachings, and when used with Enveloping Mist, your Enveloping Mist cast will start a Soothing Mist channel that can be used while moving. If you are playing Conduit of the Celestials, using Thunder Focus Tea will also trigger Heart of the Jade Serpent, which provides cooldown reduction on Renewing Mist, Rising Sun Kick, Life Cocoon, and Thunder Focus Tea. If you are playing Master of Harmony, drinking your Thunder Focus Tea will trigger your Vitality Drain. And lastly, when using rank 3 of our Apex talent, you will also trigger a Spirit Font proc when you use Thunder Focus Tea. When it comes to actually using Thunder Focus Tea, you could be using it for any of the reasons that I just mentioned, so it's a very flexible ability. Typically what I end up doing is using it primarily to force proc Spirit Font. I will use it with Rising Sun Kick by default for the healing through Ancient Teachings as well as the HOT extension. Sometimes I use it with Enveloping Mist for the instant heal, but usually it's either Rising Sun Kick or Enveloping. You'll benefit from a lot of these effects without min-maxing, so just make sure that you're using it at the least. Mana Tea is our active mana management. This allows us to regain mana in combat by generating stacks of Mana Tea to drink down for mana return. Paralysis is a soft CC for a single target that can be used to facilitate skips, stops, and when talented into pressure points, it also functions as a soothe. Ring of Peace is a very fun ability that works as area denial, a mob repositioning tool, as well as grouping. It can also help with skipping, depending on the situation, and when used with paralysis. This also works to stop casts or prevent mobs from reaching players. Leg Sweep is a simple, uncapped AoE stun. Tiger's Lust is a single target speed increase, but it will also remove slows and snares from the target. On my website, on the dungeon page, you can find the dropdown for the dungeon pool that has Tiger's Lust and anti-slow mechanic interactions. A lot of these mechanics will be removed entirely, which can help you save your Dispel or other healing cooldown. Transcendence is our self-port, which can be used for preventing knockbacks, porting to a safe point or important positions, and with a talent, it can also be used to port to an ally. And finally, we have Lighter Than Air, which is one of my personal favorites in all of our kit. This is just a bit of personal utility that allows you to prevent knockbacks, jump across gaps and perform skips, walk on water, and just helps with general mobility. You can also do a sort of flying technique with Lighter Than Air, and I have a short on it that I will link in the description if you want a tutorial. Revival can be multi-use depending on the dungeon pool. It is a powerful healing cooldown, but it also has a Master Spell component. This is often used to quickly top people before a mechanic since it is instant cast, but when used as a planned cooldown, it usually focuses on movement-heavy mechanics or mechanics with debuffs in addition to damage taken. It is important to note that technically Revival will heal before it dispels. Life Cocoon is a large absorb when you are talented into Common Coalescence, and it can be useful on DPS and healers, though it tends to not be very helpful for tanks due to the lack of damage reduction and the shield size. Oftentimes, Life Cocoon is used to prevent one-shots on non-tank players, or to remove one player from your triage during heavy AoE damage. Celestial Conduit is the button that you gain when you are talented into the Conduit of the Celestial's hero talent, and this is a channeled pulsing healing and damage ability that functions mostly by itself as a damage or healing cooldown, though it is recommended to primarily use it for healing. You have the option to press Celestial Conduit again during its channel, but this usually isn't necessary because it will automatically recast at the end of the original channel. You can also cast certain abilities during the channel without interrupting it, as long as it doesn't do healing or damage. These are things like Ring of Peace, Paralysis, Leg Sweep, Tiger's Lust, Fortifying Brew, Roll, and Dispel. Chi-Ji is one of our celestial options that we have to pick. During Chi-Ji, there are multiple sources of healing coming from the player and from the Crane summon. Player healing includes Ancient Teachings or Way of the Crane, Gust of Mist, Enveloping Mist, and Renewing Mist. The healing from Chi-Ji includes Chi Cocoons and Gust of Mist. Chi-Ji's Gust of Mist healing is triggered by the player's Blackout Kick, Rising Sun Kick, and Spinning Crane Kick. So this isn't the type of cooldown that you can just press and healing happens, you still have to be actively pressing buttons to trigger the healing from the summon. Chi-Ji will also reduce the mana cost of your Enveloping Mist by 20%, it will prevent any roots or slows from being applied to you, and it will also make your Enveloping Mist cast instant. With the tuning right now, a normal Chi-Ji rotation would be spreading your Enveloping Mist to DPS players and yourself as the healer, and then returning to your damage rotation that varies based on target count. And then at the end you can reapply your Enveloping Mist if needed. Yu'lon is a lot more simple. Yu'lon will also proc Chi Cocoons when summoned, but instead of having to DPS to proc healing, the meaningful healing with this cooldown comes from the player. Soothing Breath is Yu'lon's special ability that heals a little bit, but Yu'lon's primary use is the mana cost reduction on Enveloping Mist. You get 50% reduced mana, which is 30% more than Chi-Ji provides. During your Yu'lon window, all you're basically doing is spreading Enveloping Mist, extending those through Rising Sun Kick, and then going back to whatever you were doing before, damaging or healing, and then casting more Enveloping Mist when the original ones fell off, and repeating. Spirit Font is our Apex talent and a cooldown. The first rank allows Rising Sun Kick and Shailen's Gift to have a chance to proc Spirit Font, and when you proc, you trigger it by casting Enveloping Mist. Triggering Spirit Font will cause Soothing Mist cast to start channeling onto injured allies. Rank 2 increases the damage and healing of Rising Sun Kick and Enveloping Mist, and further increases them during Spirit Font. And Rank 3 allows you to force proc Spirit Font through Thunder Focus Tea, and it will also cause Spirit Font to apply Baby Chi Cocoons to allies. Spirit Font Soothing Mists are coming off of your character, not forcing your character to channel, so you have full mobility and cast freedom even during Spirit Font. Spirit Font Soothing Mists do not allow your abilities to be instant because it is a cast not tied to your character. These Soothing Mists from Spirit Font interact with Peaceful Mending, Elusive Mist, and other modifying talents of Soothing Mist. Spirit Font will not apply to full health allies, and if someone reaches full health during Spirit Font, the buff will collapse onto injured targets and split evenly. If someone reaches full health and then drops back down during Spirit Font, they will not regain their cast, so it can collapse but it will not split. Fortifying Brew is our primary cooldown. It increases our health and reduces the damage that we take. With Expeditious Fortification, this is a 1.5 minute cooldown, and then the additional health can also buff things like Life Cocoon and Chi Cocoon since they scale off of our health pool. Diffuse Magic is a talent that modifies our Fortifying Brew, and when talented, Diffuse Magic will cause Fortifying Brew to work as a pseudo spell reflect that can be used on certain bosses and trash packs to get a lot more damage out of our toolkit. The impact of the reflect interaction depends on the dungeon pool, and it's a spell by spell basis, but in the past, diffusible debuffs have been very strong. You just need to consider whether or not you need to save Fortifying Brew for defensive value rather than aiming to get damage out of it. Sometimes you can get both. But even if it doesn't do damage, it is still functioning as a self-dispel. Dance of the Wind is a passive in our class tree that can function as a defensive replacement. This talent provides large amounts of physical damage reduction based on your stat count. Most of the time, I'm checking my stat count to see if I need to use the defensive or if I can hold it for something else, but occasionally there's even mechanics where Dance of the Wind will reduce damage without being consumed, which allows you to ignore mechanics. Typically these are non-targeted AoE mechanics, but it does vary spell by spell. Heading over to talents, our class tree is mostly utility, so it will vary dungeon to dungeon. In general, I recommend picking up the nodes that are just percent value increases like Grace of the Crane and Swen's Ferocity. The talents that change the most are utility. Improved Detox gives us poison and disease dispels, so this is only needed for dungeons in which those debuffs are present. Pressure Points is our Soothe, and it's only needed for dungeons with enrage effects. Hasty Provocation is our speed taunt, which can be useful for positioning mobs, especially if they are fixate mobs that do not swap targets, so you don't need to worry about threat. Jade Serpent Statue is an option if you find yourself using Soothing Mist a lot. I personally find it clunky and kind of annoying to use, so I will usually skip it. And finally, Diffuse Magic is a good option if there are a lot of magic dispels in dungeons, as it functions as a dot reflect, as well as a self-dispel. I want to preface the talent section by saying that this is a recommendation from me based on performance in Mythic Plus at the higher end. Any build capable of higher keys can also perform in lower keys, but it doesn't necessarily work the other way. So these are my suggestions and what I'll be playing for my level of content, but if you aren't doing that content and you prefer something else, then do that. There's quite a bit of variety in our spec tree, but there are some talents that should always be taken, like Calm and Coalescence, Mist of Life, and Chrysalis to make Life Cocoon usable. Life Cycle should always be taken for mana management, Jadefire Teaching should always be taken for damage conversion and maintenance healing, and then Shaylin's Gift, Tranquility, and Legacy of Wisdom all provide healing outside of cooldowns that is more potent than our maintenance healing, so these should always be taken. There's two main builds that we're working with right now, and that is Way of the Crane, Rising Mist, and Mistline, and the second build is Way of the Serpent, Tear of Morning, and the T talents. This first build is what I would recommend to anyone picking up Mistweaver for the first time, who just wants to get their weeklies done. Maybe you want to hit 3k for the last in-game reward for keys. This primarily focuses on damage conversion with maintenance healing from HOTS, and then Shaylin's Gift is available as a spot heal and as an AoE heal in addition to our normal cooldowns. With this build in lower keys, you should be able to DPS most of the time, with Way of the Crane doing most of the heavy lifting in AoE, and things like Mistline and Jadefire Teachings doing more on single target encounters. It really doesn't get much easier than pressing Spinning Crane Kick, which is why this is my recommendation for beginners or those not interested in pushing super high. I will also be playing this build primarily, but there is a world where I may swap to the second build, which is Way of the Serpent, Tear of Morning with the T talents. The main difference here is that you are more focused on burst healing with this build through Tear of Morning, Peaceful Mending, and Focused Thunder, to allow for more uses of Rising Sun Kick with Jadefire Stomp, and healing through Ancient Teachings with the Jadefire Stomp proc. With this build, you are not punished as hard for having fewer targets to hit, which is an issue that Mistweaver has regularly, so this is more focused on boss and burst healing. They do play somewhat similarly, just with different profiles for healing, and I could see myself using either one depending on the damage patterns and the scaling of the dungeons, as well as future tuning changes for the spec itself. Even within these talent builds, there are a lot of swaps that you can make, whether it's entire talents or picking between two options on a choice node. You can just pick based on preference or based on dungeon requirements. Starting out, picking Way of the Crane or Way of the Serpent does not mean that you are forced to pick Chi-Ji or Yu'lon respectively. With the current tuning, you could play either Way of the Crane or Way of the Serpent with Chi-Ji and do fine. There's no reason you couldn't play Way of the Crane with Yu'lon, but the benefit of using Soothing Mist while moving would likely benefit a Yu'lon build more than a Chi-Ji build. The main difference between these is just that if you're more focused on DPSing the heal through damage conversion and easier content, as you're leveling or in lower keys, versus Way of the Serpent, which is primarily used for the buff to Shaylin's Gift and Renewing Mist. The main difference between these Celestials is how you are applying your Enveloping Mist, as well as their secondary effects. Chi-Ji's secondary effect is Gust of Mist, which is the Mastery proc we talked about earlier, and Yu'lon provides Soothing Breath, which is just some single target healing. The main question is how you want to apply your Enveloping Mist. Invoke Chi-Ji allows instant Enveloping Mist application for the duration of the summon, whereas Yu'lon provides reduced cast time in addition to an additional mana reduction on the Enveloping Mist cast. Chi-Ji will reduce the mana cost of your Enveloping Mist by 20%, and Yu'lon will provide 50% reduction. The main reason I could see for taking Yu'lon over Chi-Ji is a situation in which you cannot heal an encounter without the additional mana reduction from Yu'lon. I do still recommend Chi-Ji as default because it has a lot of anti-root and anti-snare properties, and it just generally flows better in my opinion. Jade Bond versus Gift of the Celestials is really dependent on the dungeon, the damage intake, and the timers. Your choice is really just between a longer cooldown and a longer duration, or a shorter cooldown and a shorter duration. Typically, Gift of the Celestials is default and what I recommend to Mistweaver players if they're picking it up for the first time. Jade Bond can be taken when there are larger healing requirements on longer timers that you could not heal through with Gift in addition to your other healing cooldowns. Realistically, either one could be played, but if you are just starting out, I would start with Gift and then go from there. Rising Mist has long been the default choice for Mythic Plus due to the extensions on our amps and on our hots, but a Midnight Tear of Morning received a rework that made it competitive in certain builds. Tear of Morning now increases Shaylin's Gift healing by 20% and provides a bit of cleave on Renewing Mist, healing for 8% of the healing done. This has a little bit more focus on burst healing through Shaylin's, and I would run talents like Emperor's Elixir, Tranquil Tea, and Focus Thunder alongside Tear of Morning. Rising Mist plays more into hot maintenance and healing through Renewing Mist, and some maintenance on Enveloping Mist, though it's primarily Renewing Mist. I would run Mistline and put 2 points into Secret Infusion for this, and then again either one could be used depending on the damage pattern of the dungeon. Another swap you could make is taking Overflowing Mist. This is mostly tank healing since it is direct damage taken, but if there is a dungeon with particularly high tank damage, this would help quite a bit with sustaining their health. Focus Thunder is an option if you want more use of Thunder Focus Tea empowered abilities. This can be useful for burstier healing requirements if needed. I do find that Focus Thunder works better with Tear of Morning builds since the points are more forgiving, whereas Rising Mist is a little bit more restricted because of the inclusion of Secret Infusion to get to Mistline. Peaceful Mending, similarly to Focus Thunder, fits better into Tear of Morning builds due to point allocation, but this talent does work with Soothing Mist from Spirit Font, from Jade Serpent Statue, as well as your own Soothing Mist cast. Emperor's Elixir is quite good for many builds, and it just comes down to preference. It's pretty useful for the Enveloping Mist empowerment for planning for healing during high movement phases. Otherwise, using it on Rising Sun Kick for the Jade Fire Stomp to heal through Ancient Teachings is very strong as well. Dance of Chi-Ji is an optional capstone that can be taken in dungeons with lesser healing requirements to focus on doing as much damage as possible. While it does still transfer healing through Way of the Crane, I don't really consider this talent when trying to increase my overall HPS. Mistweaver already excels on multiple targets, and I personally don't like proc-based healing. Dance of Chi-Ji also does not solve the issue of single target encounters being more challenging for us. Conduit of the Celestials is our first hero talent. Both of them can be played, but numerically Conduit is stronger at the moment. When it comes to the talents in this tree, we're only going to be going over the ones that are important or that significantly impact our gameplay. We talked about Celestial Conduit earlier in the cooldown section, but just to recap, Celestial Conduit is a channeled, pulsing, healing, and damaging ability that pretty much functions by itself as either a healing or damage cooldown, but of course it is recommended to use it mainly for healing. Jade Sanctuary provides us with a small self-heal as well as a 15% DR during our Celestial the Conduit cast, and then the DR effect lingers for 8 seconds afterwards. So if you're using Celestial Conduit, just be aware that you may not need to double up a defensive because it can function as that defensive. Strength of the Black Ox is a buff that is consumed by using Enveloping Mist during the proc. On use, it will provide small shields for your party. This is used basically as it comes up, as long as there's upcoming damage, but it may be held for a few seconds depending on when the damage is going to hit and when you have your proc. Stampede of the Ancients modifies Strength of the Black Ox so that it is 400% bigger on your primary target. This you just want to keep in mind that you should be putting it on the most injured person, the person most in danger, or the squishiest person. Path of the Falling Star is just 5 target scaling on Celestial Conduit. This is very similar to other things in our kit where it is split quote-unquote evenly among injured targets, so this is just that for Conduit. Heart of the Jade Serpent is a buff granted after using Celestial Conduit or Thunder Focus Tea, and this increases the cooldown rate of Renewing Mist, Rising Sun Kick, Life Cocoon, and Thunder Focus Tea itself. Ideally, you just want to make sure that you have these things on cooldown before you use either of those buttons. Yu'lon's avatar just adds Shaylan's Gift as a potential trigger for Heart of the Jade Serpent. And Flowing Wisdom grants you 10% haste while Heart of the Jade Serpent is active. And we have Unity Within as our capstone. This will allow Celestial Conduit to be pressed again during its channel, and it will cause the Celestials to assist you at 200% effectiveness. Because it will automatically cast at the end before it expires, you don't usually end up pressing this unless you know that you're going to have to cancel your cast before it's over. Master of Harmony is our other hero talent. When playing Master of Harmony, you gain a new resource called Vitality. Currently, the only way to track Vitality is through the buff on the buff bar. It's not the best form of tracking, but it's currently the only method that we have access to. Master of Harmony is a bit of a flatter healing profile compared to Conduit, most of the power coming from the Aspect of Harmony dot and the spot healing from Shaylan's Gift through Vitality Drain. The Aspect of Harmony capstone is the storage for Vitality, as well as the Thunder Focus Tea interaction that we mentioned earlier. When you use Thunder Focus Tea, you will begin draining Vitality, which increases your healing by 40% for 10 seconds, or until you run out of Vitality. Harmonic Gambit is what allows Master of Harmony to do damage, though in the current design of the hero talent, we rarely have enough Vitality to do damage with, since a lot of our Vitality gets drained rapidly through healing anyway. Endless Draft gives Thunder Focus Tea another stack. Optimally, you would spread out usage of these, but as we know, healing is rarely optimal, so there are times where you could send Thunder Focus Tea back to back for empowered spells. Harmonic Surge is just a proc that provides additional healing and damage when you use Tiger Palm and Shaylan's Gift. Potential Energy causes Rising Sun Kick to guarantee a Harmonic Surge proc. Meditative Focus increases the transfer rate of Ancient Teachings, so you may find yourself healing more through Ancient Teachings than you would if you were playing Conduit. And finally, the capstone is Coalescence, and this provides the splash effect for the Aspect of Harmony dot and hot. This will also cause Shaylan's Gift to not contribute Vitality and instead drain it to buff the healing done. This is part of why we can sometimes struggle to generate high Vitality for damage, is that a lot of it just gets eaten by healing, both during the building phase and the spending phase. There's a few things to consider when deciding how to heal damage as a Mistweaver. The first one is how many players are injured. Remember that Ancient Teachings are split evenly among injured targets, which means if only one target's injured, they will receive 100% of your Ancient Teachings healing. This can cover decently high damage intake for one player. If there's 2 injured players, you may still be able to get away with continuing your DPS rotation depending on how intense the damage is. And then at 3 to 5 targets, I may try to continue DPSing, but in the end, it really does depend on the type of damage and how much they're taking. The second question is, how much damage are they taking? If they are taking moderate to low damage, you can continue your DPS rotation and heal through Ancient Teachings or Way of the Crane. If the damage is more severe or sustained over a long period of time, it's time to consider a cooldown or some more significant healing, like Life Cocoon or Shaylan's Gift. Another question I ask myself is how many enemies can I hit and for how long? Mistweaver scales pretty heavily with multiple enemies, and as a result, it can be quite a bit more effort for similar throughput when there's only one enemy to hit. This is most noticeable with Way the Crane, but it can impact which spells we end up using to heal. You should be able to heal through Way the Crane better on multiple targets, but on a single target, you're going to rely more on Ancient Teachings or casted heals. And lastly, do I need to hold cooldowns for another mechanic, and what do I have available? If you have significant healing to do but there's unexpected damage taken, it's time to consider which cooldowns you have available and which ones will be back up before their planned use time. Usually this will end up being Shaylan's Gift since it has the shortest cooldown and the shortest use time, or potentially no cast time at all. The maintenance healing rotation will provide healing through ancient teachings, as well as some renewing mist applied through rapid diffusion, and the extension of those renewing mist through rising mist if that's what you're talented into. If you're talented into Crane style, you will also get some Gust of Mist healing out of the Rising Sun kick. If the damage intake is significant enough between 1 to 3 allies that Ancient Teachings or Way the Crane cannot heal through it by itself, you can use Soothing Mist to triage apply Enveloping Mist and focus the lowest health player with Shaylin's Gift. At this point, you would still want to be using your Rising Sun kick on cooldown to extend the Enveloping Mist that you have active, and you'll just be using Shaylin's Gift on the lowest party member. As soon as they get topped up or are at least stable, you can move on to the next lowest, and so on. You could also use Thunder Focus Tea to force proc a Spirit Font and utilize that, and then continue to heal with Shaylin's Gift or Ancient Teachings if possible. And at 4 or more injured allies with damage still incoming, this is where you would send a cooldown like Celestial Conduit, Chi-Ji, high stacks of Shaylin's Gift, or Revival. You could also use Thunder Focus Tea to force proc a Spirit Font and use that. For our damage rotation, there are far less questions to ask ourselves. The only question that we ask is how many enemies can I hit and for how long? Spinning Crane Kick heals quite a bit through Way of the Crane, but if you're only pressing Spinning Crane Kick, you are not maintaining your HOTS, specifically Renewing Mist and Enveloping Mist. This is fine if the damage pattern allows you to continue healing through Spinning Crane Kick alone, but if the mobs that you're using to heal will die or despawn, you need to make sure that you have some HOTS to make up for the loss of target count as you transition into your single target rotation. While pressing Rising Sun Kick over Spinning Crane Kick in situations with many mobs may be a damage loss, we are still healers first, and sometimes what's best for healing is suboptimal for DPS. For 1 to 3 target damage, our rotation is going to be Rising Sun Kick on cooldown, 1 Tiger Palm into 1 Blackout Kick to try to get a reset on your Rising Sun Kick. If you do get a reset, then Rising Sun Kick is always our highest priority button. If not, you can continue alternating Tiger Palm and Blackout Kick. And at 4 or more targets, it is Spinning Crane Kick. Again, I would recommend using Rising Sun Kick in addition to Spinning Crane Kick just as it comes off of cooldown, because you don't want to be left with absolutely nothing if you run out of mobs or if some unexpected damage happens. There is also a stopcast macro that you can find on my website at wayofthecrane.io that will allow you to get rid of that little gap in between your Spinning Crane Kick spam casts. If you need more help, there are some excellent additional resources available. Wayofthecrane.io is my website where you will find this guide in written form, as well as talent import codes and UI imports. The Peak of Serenity Discord is the Monk class Discord where we have some very knowledgeable players available to help out. Wowhead.com, you can find the written guide for Mistweaver by Swirl. Questionably Epic Live is where we get information on our trinkets and our gear. And WaitI'mRamping.com, also by Swirl, provides some useful analysis tools and bug lists. And that is all I have today. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out in my Discord, in Peaks, or in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.